Alright, I'm not entirely sure where to begin, but I think there are loads of issues with the new Need for Speed game. It's still really enjoyable, and I'm not trying to bash the developers, but provide feedback on a lot of the issues that the game has and ways to improve the game. I think the game has a lot of content that isn't used. Many have said before that it needs more content, and while it does, I think they can do a lot more with what we already have right now. First, I want to talk about sort of the lack of endgame. I think games nowadays should have PvP multiplayer when they come out and not several months down the line, and I understand why they might have not had the time to have it in there, but if they want to keep people playing the game, it's a must-have. While I could see them doing a sort of bare bones supplement for it, there's a lot more that they can do with PvP to make it fun and not just, you know, like every other multiplayer mode in other racing games nowadays. It not only needs to provide an incentive to play it, but it needs to be fun in and of itself. I didn't enjoy a lot of multiplayer games this generation. Some of the games that I enjoyed last generation were Blur, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010, Burnout Paradise, and as for this generation of The Crew, each of these games has its own unique sort of thing that Need for Speed can take from it. So Blur had this constant ranking system where even if you lost a lot of races, you'd still be motivated to play because you were constantly be making progress towards something. The incentive here was special vehicles that you got after hitting rank 50. It also helped that the PvP was fun in and of itself due to its unique gameplay. Now, you can't exactly have the same style of gameplay in Heat because one is centered around power-ups and Heat obviously isn't. But when you're playing online in Need for Speed, you should have an incentive to be constantly playing online. And what you can do this with is Legendary Edition cars. We already have seen this with the 350Z and the M3 GTR. If you, let's say you had Darius's Audi Le Mans Quattro as a reward for reaching some level in PvP, and you constantly rank up towards it, that'll keep people playing and they'll have an incentive to keep playing, and then they'll be rewarded. Hot Pursuit 2010 had a ranking system, but it didn't really keep you playing for that long. But the thing about it was the PvP multiplayer was fun in and of itself because it had such great netcode. You could scrape up against someone online and not immediately ruin the race for yourself or for the opponent. I've seen clips on Reddit and other places where people are playing Need for Speed Heat, and it seems like it's a burnout game. You tap someone and then immediately their chances are gone. With PvP in Hot Pursuit 2010, they didn't do anything really all that special or unique. It was just that the basis on which you were racing other players against was built quite well. Again, you can scrape up against someone, and it won't be that you hit them on your screen and on their screen you didn't. It won't be a race ending for you or for them. It was just really fun, and Heat's takeaway here is to improve on netcode, collisions, physics, and all of those types of issues. Now, Burnout Paradise had a lot of endgame because of sheer content, because it had, I think, 500 online challenges. But free burn challenges were fun. And Heat doesn't have to have free burn challenges, but these challenges are very unique to the game and the style of game that it is. What Need for Speed can do here is find something that'll make its online multiplayer set it apart from other games. You know, with Burnout and Free Burn challenges, it suited the game. And what you can do is you can rip Team Escape straight from Need for Speed World, and it would fit perfectly into Heat. You know, maybe you have a single long Team Escape race, but there are no repairs and all of your auxiliary parts are disabled. That would be a perfect way to have a unique online mode that other games are lacking in. The Crew, the first game to be specific, was really the only current generation game where I played a lot of multiplayer. The fact that PvP gave you a lot of money was an incentive, but so was the ranking system. But not to mention, it was fun in and of itself because of non-contact races. One benefit to non-contact races is that although I was never very good at the game, if I did win any races in The Crew, it felt like I actually won the race. In past NFS games, if I win, it's because the other driver got rammed by someone, clipped into something, hit a traffic car, or didn't get a proper chance at overtaking me because of how bugged collisions are. And if I lost a race in The Crew, I was never irritated. I was honestly quite impressed because I could see what lines they were taking, and instead of just the fact that they ran into me and then I had no chance of winning. Now, there were a few overpowered cars in the crew, but the game got updated so often that they would be patched out, and you would almost have to research what the new overpowered car was. Now, in a perfect world, there would be complete balancing, and that wouldn't even be an issue. But that's not going to happen. Anytime I feel like you're nerfing something, then whatever is the second most overpowered vehicle then becomes the most overpowered vehicle. And it's really hard to balance these types of things. If they try to continuously balance cars in Need for Speed Heat, that would be very helpful. Because right now, cars like the Porsche 911 RSR are OP, and even cars that aren't the best but still really good, like the F40, the Ford GT, and the Wyra. If I race an R35 against a Ford GT, I'm not gonna win. If the game was balanced and non-contact, then maybe I would have a chance, and maybe it would be fun. Non-contact races would immediately solve the issue of a bad netcode, but it wouldn't solve the issue of clipping and physics. Also, I was racing with some friends earlier. We decided to race in just level 200 cars in Heat. It was really well balanced and quite fun. Minor collisions against other people at level 200 is not gonna completely ruin the race for you, so that's something to take note of. I think they should have some online races where you're restricted to maybe level 200, maybe 300, and then obviously 400 plus. They think of this as kind of the crew with street spec, performance spec, and circuit spec. You can have all kinds of different types of races, and they can all be fun in different ways. And also, with more restricted races, that means you kind of have a little bit more freedom with what types of engine swaps you might use, or what cars, or even performance parts. Yeah, you have to think carefully about them. You can't just slap on the best part as you would with level 400 races. The next thing I want to talk about is other things related to endgame that don't involve PvP multiplayer. Heat has a lot of races that feel pointless, and this is because there aren't many 400 plus races. To keep races from being pointless, you have to pause the game, swap out performance parts, and then start racing lower level races, or just keep your car as leveled up as it is and accept that there's no competition or fun at all. It's also worth mentioning that races with lower performance don't give out much money, so that means if you really enjoy racing in a level 300 car, for example, you're just gonna have to accept you won't be able to make that much money. That's not a huge issue. It's a nitpick. Some races with 2 recommended levels of AI exist, and I think there should be an additional recommended level available to all races to make them either 400 plus or to have them match your current car level. Some races will now have 2 recommended AI level options, and some of them will have 3. If you do this, every single race in the game is viable again. Every single race. Racing at night in Need for Speed Heat is pretty pointless after you hit level 50 and after getting high heat parts, since high heat parts are unlocked from that point on. High heat races and night races in general can be viable again if you provide a big payout, or instead have each race give you half as much money as it gives you rep, but the multiplier for heat level also multiplies money that you earn. And if you get busted, you lose your money multiplier. You can also have high heat races give you a much higher amount of money, and this doesn't make daytime pointless either, because daytime racing will still give you money, but it'll be safe, and you don't have to risk it if you don't want to. If you want to risk it, you can go ahead and do races at night, or even better yet, keep that same half as much money as rep per race at night idea, except if you get busted, you lose all of the money that you earn at night. That would be a perfect risk versus reward. I don't think it would be too overpowered with making money. Racing at night could also give you wager races, and this would really suit the theme of the game, and also the nighttime atmosphere, and also I guess the risk versus reward aspect of the game. So maybe this could be an option during high heat races or in other races. And I don't want it to be like Payback, where you do a small, really easy, nearly insignificant challenge and you get twice as much money. You bet a significant portion of money. You will lose all of that if you lose. You will win however much is set if you win. You know, think of Midnight Club. I think that would work great. There are a lot of other gameplay fixes that I think they should consider. The AI is very inconsistent. After you beat the race, you can see the level that the AI is, and often there's one guy that's way higher than everyone else, and that's the AI that'll either make the race really unenjoyable or really enjoyable if the rest of the AI are way too slow. There were a few times where I had really fun and interesting races where an AI kept up quite well, and it was a real challenge, and I really liked that. Except that's probably the level that all of the AI should have been, and not just one AI. I think they should just balance and fix it. The AI should just be what the recommended level is. And it shouldn't be way too easy in some races and way too difficult in others. I can already predict the response I'm going to get. I think cops are really unbalanced. Really, really unbalanced. I don't think they're perfect. At all. Not even slight. Honestly, I don't even think they're good. They're way too easy with a fast car, and way too hard with a slow car. The cops are only difficult because of how fragile cars are. There shouldn't be warnings on the screen for rhinos, and you shouldn't have tires that reinflate unless you have the auxiliary part. The whole point of spike strips is to slow you down, not take a significant part of your health away. Now, it is good that they do take away a significant part of your health, only to balance the fact that your tires will reinflate at any point in time. Cops need to feel threatening in a fast car, and currently they really don't. Also, because of this, other auxiliary parts are completely obsolete because of how much damage cops can do. If you want to use the nitrous auxiliaries, it's great for racing and whatnot, but reinflatable tires are made useless by the fact that your tires will reinflate anyway, and the radar disruptor isn't worth it. If you weigh sort of the benefit of each auxiliary part, damage reduction is the only one that actually matters. If you get the damage increasing part, you will do a decent amount of damage against cops, but then they'll just eat away half of your health by tapping you. Let's say you're at level 250, you want to get into an intense cop chase. They're going to keep up with you, and they're not going to do much except kind of linger around you, and then they'll scrape against your car and take away a chunk of your health. It just doesn't feel right. The whole aspect of difficulty is gone because the cops themselves actually aren't hard. They immediately die after you go over a jump. They're somewhat easy to fool. If you're in a relatively fast car, I would say above 300 or maybe 350, they're incredibly easy to escape. At Heat 5, if you keep going, if you go on the highway and just go fast enough, I'm almost certain you will evade them every single time. That's not how cops should be. I think Ghost relied too much on using damage as a sort of way to make cops difficult, but the cops actually aren't difficult. If you play Most Wanted 05 and you're at Heat level 5, you'll have loads of cars swarming all around you, slamming into you, slowing you down, forming rolling roadblocks, and doing all sorts of different things to try to trip you up. In Heat, you'll have maybe 3 cops around you, maybe a helicopter. They just kind of linger around. They sideswipe you and take away a huge part of your health, and then just linger around you some more. Rhinos come, which are fun and great, except the fact that it warns you. If the point of a rhino is to catch you off guard, why is the warning there? That makes absolutely no sense. Corner cutting is a huge issue. This has been talked about before. Either you should punish the player by making them slow down, or have neon barriers like older NFS games, or even if you penalize the player by adding time penalties to their finish time, and then using that to determine who wins a race. It really needs to be fixed before PvP arrives, because if it arrives and there's corner cutting, that's going to be a disaster. It doesn't matter that much which way they solve the issue so long as they solve it. I don't care, I just don't want corner cutting to be an issue anymore. The livery editor in the game could use a description feature for searching for wraps so that you can know what kind of a design that you're looking for. It also really needs a vinyl group feature so you can have more complex designs. I think the soundtrack has a big issue, and it's not the songs themselves, but surely the developers or whoever is handling the soundtrack has to know that because of just how subjective music is and how subjective people's tastes are, you can't appeal to everyone. You can try to get as many genres as possible. You can appeal to the theme and the atmosphere of the game, which is what I think Need for Speed has done. There's one thing that I think should be in every single type of game, regardless of what it is, for a soundtrack, and that is the ability to choose what songs you want to hear and when. There should be something like EA tracks, as with games in the past where you can pick what you want to hear and where and when you want to hear it, such as the garage or at the open world during the day or at night or during races, drift events, etc. This isn't about the music itself, but what you can do with it. I mean, they have to know that not everyone is going to like certain songs, and it would be way better to have a way to organize them. And also, because this game has so many different places where you hear music, and they're specific to those places, I think the ability to pick where you want to hear certain songs will really help, because right now, you'll cycle through the same songs over and over and over again until you do something else in the game. It makes the soundtrack feel way smaller and more repetitive than it actually is. There are also some other miscellaneous things I want to talk about. The game is pretty buggy. People should not still be losing all of their progress and all of their money and cars and whatnot. The game shouldn't be soft locking or full-on crashing. There's still weird clipping issues, so you'll be going around a corner and then maybe your car will jut into the ground and then bounce back at 270 degrees opposite the direction you're heading in. PC optimization is pretty weird. The game runs quite well on my computer, and it runs really terribly on my laptop. Now, my computer is quite a bit more powerful than my laptop, but it doesn't run as well as it should respective to its processing power, if that makes any sense. I'm expecting the game to run decent on my computer and a bit worse, but not that much worse, on my laptop. And I'm using other games that I've played on both to sort of measure this. I can play games like Horizon 4 on my laptop at a solid 60 frames a second at the 1080p high preset. This game will not hold 60 frames on my laptop unless I set everything to the absolute minimum. That is not at all what a computer with a GTX 1650 should have to do. I have a lot of small nitpicks to talk about the game. These I don't think are major issues and are more just personal things that I wanted to talk about. The game doesn't feel immersive like 2015 does. In Heat, I really just feel like I'm playing a video game. I think part of the reason is due to the fact that there are animated characters instead of FMVs, but some people prefer the characters over FMVs, and I understand that, and that's fine. Games like Midnight Club LA and Need for Speed 2015 felt a lot more realistic. In 2015, it felt like you were just a street racer trying to get the attention of big name, and games like Midnight Club had a lot of very minor details that made the experience as a whole feel much more realistic. The fact that you drove up to others and then flashed your headlights to start races, the fact that the people you raced against actually had character models and voice actors, and they would trash talk you and you would trash talk back to them, the fact that the AI would get irritated at you if you rammed them, that felt immersive. Midnight Club also had a lot of bystanders that were all over the place. Cars that should cost maybe $5,000 to $6,000 cost $20,000 to $30,000. That's not me complaining that it's too hard to get these cars, because you'll do a 3-minute race and get $70,000. Performance upgrades cost a lot of money. Engine swaps sometimes cost more than the cars that they come from. Races, again, award an absurdly high amount of money. It doesn't make sense, again, to get $70,000 from a 3-minute race and then spend part of that money on an engine that costs $300,000. The car from which it came from costing maybe 70 grand. And Need for Speed 2015 having $200,000 felt like a lot of money. And cars had reasonable prices, performance parts had reasonable prices, and races gave out more realistic payouts. Overall, the game is still really enjoyable, and it does need some content sometime in the future, but it can do a lot better with what it already has.